Let's be honest, choosing the right book can either make or break your language learning experience. The problem is, most people let the book dictate how they learn instead of shaping it around their own needs. That's why today I'd like to talk about how to choose the right textbook for you, and also how to tailor any book to meet your personal learning goals. First and foremost, it's completely okay to have several different books for different purposes. You might have a book for grammar, a book for vocabulary, a book with specialized professional vocabulary like marketing, law, or medicine, and even an exam prep book if you're taking, let's say, TOEFL or IELTS. The most important thing is to define your own needs before diving in and then iterate accordingly. For example, if your main textbook does not go into enough detail about a particular grammar point, then it might be a good idea to turn to a dedicated grammar book. Or let's say if your goal is to pass a language exam, then some targeted practice tests are going to take you much further than sticking to a standardized textbook. In short, your materials should serve you, not the other way around. Let's start by talking about beginner textbooks. And actually, one of the biggest pet peeves I have with them is how overwhelming they can be from the start. Specifically, when they offer long lists of random words and topics that are completely irrelevant at the beginner stage, when all you need really is some tools to survive basic communication. Take the Ukrainian textbook Yabloko, for instance. Now, do beginners really need to know multiple countries and nationalities or how to count to 100 in the first 20 pages of the book? In my opinion, what would really be helpful is learning to ask some basic directions, order food, and simply ask where's the bathroom. I've experienced the exact same thing with the Turkish textbook Istanbul, which had a beginner-level text about peri bacaları, the fairy chimneys in Cappadocia. Now, that's a very nice cultural reference, sure, but at that stage, words like chimneys or fairies added nothing to my real-life communication skills, and to this day, I've never once used the word chimney in Turkish, even when I traveled to Cappadocia. That's why it's perfectly fine to skip certain texts or even entire chapters if you feel that the vocabulary is irrelevant, impractical, or just plain absurd. Now, there is a time and place for every word, but when you're just getting acquainted with the language, your mental energy and your mental space are limited. That's why I suggest that you focus on the words that will help you speak faster, the vocabulary that will truly move the needle for you, and save the exotic or overly specific words for later. This also ties into another point worth repeating. You do not have to finish a textbook just because it's there. If a text, a page, or even a chapter does not serve your goals or feels useless, skip it without guilt. Take what's valuable and leave the rest. Now, let's talk about grammar books. In my mind, a good grammar book should bring clarity, not confusion. It should make complex topics simple and accessible, help you see the structure behind the language, and also give you confidence that you can actually use what you've learned. A poor one, on the other hand, will leave you drowning in unnecessary detail, unable to make sense of what's going on, and even question yourself and your ability to comprehend the material. And when that happens, trust me, it's not you who is incapable, it's just a badly written book. So do not be afraid to switch it out because you deserve good materials that actually help you learn, not the ones that make you doubt yourself. Different grammar books can serve different purposes too. For example, during my university French course, the professor relied heavily on scattered printouts and random materials and did not use one single structured language textbook. That's when Grammaire en Dialogue became my main language resource and in a way has replaced the traditional textbook, which I did not complain about because the series had multiple levels, great grammar explanations, amazing dialects with genuinely useful vocabulary that helped me see the grammar in action. When studying English, on the other hand, I would occasionally dip into Grammar Wave 4, which was pure rules and exercises. Again, both approaches had their place. It all comes down to your individual needs as a learner. Going back to textbooks, something that's often underestimated is how much engagement affects retention. And to be fair, your progress in a language does depend largely on how invested and interested you are in your study materials. And honestly, I don't know about you, but I'm kind of tired of run-of-the-mill texts about global warming and social media addiction and whatnot. That's why when the book offers fresh and non-trivial reading material, I immediately pay attention. For example, my favorite English textbook series, Upstream, offers texts about top medical discoveries, the history of faked photos and ghost photographers, the cultural significance and legacy of The Lord of the Rings, and even the impact of stress on a child's cognitive development. That's the kind of reading material that keeps me hooked and makes me go back to the textbook again and again. Another indicator of a good language textbook is whether it has dedicated sections focused entirely on practicing correct language use and also expanding your vocabulary. Again, let's take Upstream as an example because I have it on hand and it's easy for me to show you exactly what I mean. So this textbook has sections titled Use of English and Language Focus, with exercises targeting word formation, collocations, phrasal verbs, correct use of prepositions, and so on. Plus, it has slightly more advanced exercises where you have to choose the most appropriate word from a group of synonyms, rewrite a sentence using a specific word or grammar structure, and even come up with one word that would fit in 3 different sentences. In my experience, these kinds of exercises are super challenging and satisfying, but they're also extremely beneficial if you want to reach true language mastery. Last but not least, at the heart of every effective textbook lies one thing: structure. Structure is what allows you to make sense of the language so that you can later use it with confidence. Without structure, progress would feel scattered and inconsistent. If you're taking a language class and your assigned textbook does not offer you that structure, supplement it with a grammar book that does. As I already mentioned it in my video on why grammar is more important than vocabulary for beginners, language can be imagined as a tree, where grammar forms the root system and vocabulary grows in it just like leaves and branches. The thing is, without strong roots, the entire thing collapses. So make sure you have a strong foundation and the rest will grow in it naturally. So to wrap up, a textbook is not a rule book. It's just a resource and it's meant to work for you. So don't hesitate to use multiple textbooks, skip what doesn't serve you, and focus on structure, clarity, and engagement. Because the more you enjoy your materials, the more progress you'll make. That's it for today's video. If you found it helpful, give it a like, subscribe, and let me know in the comments how you approach your textbooks. Do you stick to one or do you mix and match? And also, do you have textbooks that are your holy grails? I'm really curious about those. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.